Governor Palin, your former colleague, Governor Bobby Jindal of Louisiana, had a plan to stop that oil from reaching the Louisiana beaches nearly 2 months ago, and the federal government wouldn't let him do it. Should he have gone ahead and done it anyway?
Heck yeah, they should have done it anyway, because we're talking about people's lives and livelihoods adversely affected by this tragedy in the Gulf. So yes, he should have done it and asked for forgiveness later. That's what I believe that is appropriate. But, you know, let me differ a little bit there with Congressman Paul on the regulatory need here for oversight of natural resource development. In Alaska, we learned very quickly with big oil companies that you can't just rely on their oversight. Their perception of situations and circumstances are certainly different than perhaps the public's perception of a situation like we're seeing in the Gulf right now. So in Alaska, we couldn't just trust that what they were telling us in terms of their regulations, in terms of their operating procedures or their measurements and standards were such that they didn't have to be verified. We had to set up our own offices in the state of Alaska to verify what they were telling us was true. And I think that there's been some lax oversight in the federal government under MMS, and that needs to change quickly. Otherwise, people are not going to trust that drilling can be done safely and responsibly. Back
to Governor Jindal and your advocacy that he should do the right thing. Can governors, can states nullify federal behavior when it violates rights like property rights and human rights and liberties of individuals?
If that is for me, governors, for the most part, understand the 10th Amendment to our Constitution and understand that local control is the best way to control and to govern effectively. So, you know, I don't know in the legal realm what Governor Jindal would be able to do and then perhaps not get sued by the federal government. But if there is a respect for the 10th Amendment in the Constitution, then yes, a governor, a local governing body, should be able to have a lot more control than what we're allowed to have today under the Obama administration.
Congressman Paul, if the federal government wants to mandate something that is obviously against the Constitution, can the states refuse to comply? State it differently. Can they nullify federal behavior, which is obviously harmful to property and freedom?
Well, they should, but they're not able to because the federal government comes down with a heavy hand right now. But it was intended. Jefferson obviously argued this case that they should. And I think that's what the whole Tea Party movement's about. Big government is failing. The federal government is collapsing. And now these laws are not going to be enforceable. When they run out of money, they won't even be able to pay for these programs. So I think it's going to be de facto nullification. And I think that's what the people have awakened to this. But the government in Washington, the people in Washington, don't even understand what's happening yet.
Governor Palin, Congressman Paul, stick with us. Ronald Reagan once said that the person who agrees with you 80% of the time is a friend, not 20% an enemy. So let's hear where the Tea Parties disagree. And later, Ron Paul's son, Senate candidate Dr. Rand Paul, here on his cure for the movement's differences. We're back with former Governor Sarah Palin and Congressman Ron Paul. We're calling this the Tea Party Summit. Among some differences in the movement is foreign policy. Social conservatives among the Tea Party movement are generally hawks, and libertarians in the party are much more dovish. Governor Palin, can that be reconciled? Can those in this movement that think we should shoot first before they shoot at us be reconciled with those who think we shouldn't fight any wars unless we're attacked first?
Well, I believe that those who think we shouldn't engage in war unless we're shot at first don't understand what Ronald Reagan used to talk about peace through strength, that the best way to avoid a fight is to be prepared for a fight and to be more adamant to win that fight if we were to engage in it than the other guys. So, yeah, there can be reconciliation there if we go back to some time-tested truths that were espoused by Reagan and understand that we need to be prepared to fight.
Nobody questions that we need a Department of Defense, and we have to be prepared.
Defend our country if we're attacked. Like on 9/11, we should defend ourselves.
Do we need 900 permanent military installations around the world?
No, and it's coming to an end. I think this so-called disagreement that you're suggesting is irrelevant because we're broke. And all empires end, and we do have an empire. When you have 900 and some bases, 135 countries, and we're the policemen of the world, That comes to an end when you go broke, and we are broke. So the troops will come home. I'd like to just bring them home and save us from the bankruptcy. But no, they'll come home when the bankruptcy is declared, when the dollar doesn't function, and when there's such turmoil in the financial markets. We will come home.
We have legitimate allies, Congressman Paul, that we should be defending overseas because of their closeness to us, because they are democracies, like, say, for example, Israel.
No, I'd treat Israel like all the other countries, and I would say that we don't need bases in Germany, the Middle East, Japan, Korea, and they should be friends. We should take the advice of the founders. We should trade with them. We should travel. We should visit, be friends with them. But we don't get involved in their internal or their external squabbles, and we ought to just stay out of it. It would be the best for America and best for the world.
If Israel is attacked, Governor Palin, should we be over there to defend it?
I think we should help defend Israel because the strong ally in the Middle East basically is our only ally over there. And for America's best interests, I think we need to be prepared to help defend Israel. I do agree with Congressman Paul, though, when he talks about an uninhibited empire building. No, we cannot engage in that. And our budget is not going to allow us to do that. But responsible engagement in some of these other parts of the world can lead to a safer world, a more peaceful world. As long as people realize that America can lead in this peace effort, and peace through strength, again, is what's going to be needed, I think it's responsible of us to be engaged in some other areas on the globe.
Governor Palin, switching gears, is it any business of the federal government if someone were to use a recreational drug in the privacy of their home in such a time and manner as not to harm another individual?
Well, if we're talking about pot, I'm not for the legalization of pot because I think that that would just encourage, especially our young people, to think that it's okay to go ahead and use it, and I'm not an advocate for that. However, I think that we need to prioritize our law enforcement efforts, and if somebody's going to smoke a joint in their house and not do anybody else any harm, then perhaps there are other things that our cops should be looking at to engage in and try to clean up some of the other problems that we have in society that are appropriate for law enforcement to do, and not concentrate on such a, relatively speaking, minimal problem that we have in the country.
Congressman Paul, should the police be breaking down doors with military equipment and shooting dogs and terrifying children in order to look for a minuscule remnant of marijuana in somebody's pipe in their bedroom?
Obviously not. We should legalize freedom of choice. A government can't protect individuals from themselves. We can aim to protect against harm against each other, but not what we do for or against ourselves. Everything that people say about marijuana and other drugs could apply to alcohol. Alcohol is the deadly drug, cigarettes. It's just a useless battle. I think the most magnificent thing was when they woke up one day and said prohibition of alcohol was an insane policy, and we're waking up right now. Just think of all the nullification about marijuana laws now, and the left is with us on that. Just nullify all those laws.
Governor Palin, you had a very unfortunate incident during the campaign where somebody hacked into your emails, and the guy was prosecuted and rightfully convicted, and the courts will handle that. Should the government be able to hack into your emails without a search warrant from a judge and on a whim?
Absolutely not. No. And that's an indication, those who would advocate for such a thing, an indication of how far we have strayed from our constitutional rights to liberty and freedom, and why we must fight with a unified Tea Party movement to make sure that government never strays that far from our Constitution to think that it's okay to hack into anybody's email, whether you're a government official or not.
You know, this was supposed to be the segment on which the Tea Party groups were going to disagree, and we keep finding some common ground. The Patriot Act,
that means,
which you were one of the few in the House to vote against, does let the federal government hack into people's emails and other private information without a search warrant from a judge. Is the Tea Party movement, Governor Palin, Congressman Paul, and all the other people involved, against that type of invasion of privacy?
Well, I don't think the two of us can speak for the whole Tea Party movement, but I think the Tea Party movement, if they're smart, they're going to get on board and saying, yes, we don't want our private email hacked into, which means that we aim to repeal the Patriot Act. So I think the people are waking up to this. Too much government, too much invasion of our privacy, too much control, and we need to repeal the whole mess.
Like any family, the Tea Party has some differences. And speaking of family, joining the conversation is one of the first big victories for the movement. Congressman Paul's son, Dr. Rand Paul, is here. He's the Republican candidate for the Senate from Kentucky, and he joins us right after this on the Tea Party Summit.